why it's good to have a nice thin tip on the soldering iron. Definitely don't use a soldering gun for this kind of thing. You want something very fine. This is only 15-watt soldering iron. And this is the drop of solder I put on the back post of the power jack. Now we're going to cut a little piece of wire. We're going to attach it to the back post, and we're going to attach it to that solder point. Again, I'm using my little pliers here to strip the wire. Probably better use of wire cutters to do this, but I'm getting pretty good at doing it this way. The only danger of doing it that way for stripping the wires, you could actually cut the actual wire that you're trying to strip, so you don't want to do that. And again, I'm using my technique of just tinning the sides, the edges of these wires. Put a little solder on each point. You don't want to use too long of a wire, because remember, you have to stick this back into a confined area that may not have the space to fit a large wire. So that's why I use short wires to do this. Okay, I'm going to use the pliers to hold this in place. I'm going to try to zoom in and give you guys a better view here. Let's take the wire, put it in place. I guess it's not really that good of a view, but you'll see the finished product. And touch the wire to that solder point we created on the back of the post. Make sure that that's pretty solid. Pull it with some pliers there and make sure it's a good strong connection. I'm going to bend it so it fits right, it touches right at the other solder point on the motherboard. Okay, the end was a little too long, so I just cut a little bit off. You don't want too much metal showing on the end of these wires, because then it has a chance of short-circuiting. And I'm just going to take a little bit of solder. It's tough to get a good view here without my hands in the way. Sorry about that, guys, but I'll show you the finished product and you'll get the idea. And that's all it took. Just a little touch of the soldering iron. Let's pull it, see if it's secure. Right now it's going from the post to that solder point we created. And I think we got a winner. And this is what we accomplished. You will see that the wire we just installed there goes from the back post of the power jack and connects to that point we put right on the motherboard, that other solder point. It's basically acting, the wire is basically acting as the post would be, but again, I used it for flexibility. I love using the wires for flexibility because now the customer can be a little more reckless with the power jack and not worry about the brittle solder points breaking because they're both connected with wires now. You got flex. Just want to test it again with the pliers, make sure it's in there well. And we're good to go. Time to put some stuff away, which I'm going to speed up for you guys real quick here. Then we're going to put the rest of the computer back together. Now I'm going to take the CPU heatsink and CPU fan here. You see that broken metal? That's actually how it was removed from the processor. The processor has some metal on it as well. And we're going to have to get that off and probably put some thermal grease on the processor and make a better connection. See, I'm scraping off the metal that is broken. So a lot of times on laptops, the manufacturer likes to use that thin sheet of aluminum or whatever it is to create a connection. But when it rips apart, the seal between the processor and the heatsink is not that great, so we're going to have to do it the good old-fashioned way with thermal grease. You want to get that processor removed of all the gook on there and make it nice and shiny. And then be careful that there's no residue of the paper. If you're using a paper towel like I am, make sure there's no residue of a paper towel. It might burn up. So once I'm sure I get the residue off, it's a little piece of Scotch-Brite I'm using. Just don't use that. You don't want to push too hard with that. And you can on the heatsink, but not on the processor itself. In fact, it's not a real good thing to use, but it might give you a little bit clean surface to work with. This gets to be kind of a pain. It's real gummy. When you get under that sheet of aluminum, there's a gummy residue that you have to get off. So just do the best you can. And then once we get a nice clean spot on the heatsink there, we'll reattach it, put a little drop of thermal grease, and we'll be okay. In fact, I'm using a real fine grade sandpaper here.